Hello and welcome back to Speed Demon Painting. Today we are taking a look at the new Armoured class release by Warcradle Studios for the Union, called the Durango Heavy Rail Set. This box was kindly sent to me for review, so let's take off the shrink wrap and check out what is inside. The first thing you are greeted with is a leaflet showing you the link to the website where you can find both the build instructions of the model and any gaming rules it has. I'll be taking a closer look at the rules in the second half of the video and what this model brings to the game, so make sure you stay tuned for that part of the video. Inside the box we have a massive bag of resin parts to make the Durango train, but also quite a few plastic sprues and bases to expand your existing force or make a few armoured units that can now be transported by train. If you want to know more about these armoured sprues, I've linked a video in the top corner to the comprehensive review of these sprues when the Union faction starter came out. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all things Dystopian Age, make sure to like this video and subscribe for any future videos. Now if you want to see what types of unit you can make with these plastic sprues, I do have some finished models already for my Union force. Shown here are the Rolling Thunder main battle tank, the Moab artillery, which is great for shelling infantry across the board, and you can make 2 tanks and 2 artillery pieces. You also get 4 of these dreadnought styled automata mecha, which can provide a great screen for any units that you want to push up the boards or harass on the other enemy frontline units. And you also get a unit of these durable Iron Eagle jet bikes. This is the only unit you cannot transport on the train. Now something to note, I got 3 bases of sprues in my box, which is definitely more than you need for the plastic sprues. Either this was a welcome mistake or you're getting quite a few extra bases in this box, which is great if you ever want to make some unit fillers, and I do plan to make a little video about how you can make those. Now onto the main course, the big baggie of resin. I'm just going to pull out the sprues in a random way, and the first one seems to be the lower part of the Durango locomotive itself. It comes with this lovely detailed anti-air gunner on it, and the end cap for the final carriage of your land train. This little piece can be glued into one of the end cap parts, of which you get 9, or you can place and not glue the connector parts in these, so your land train can become connected into one giant unit on the tabletop. These connector parts can be found on these tiny sprues, and you'll find some small 3mm holes in them should you wish to magnetize them. You'll need some 3x1mm disc magnets, and a guide on how to magnetize them was already included in the video I linked earlier. There are also 4 machine guns on there which are glued into these top carriage for the New Haven transporters. The top part of the Durango is simply glued to the bottom part of it and finished off with an end cap and a connector. For the bottom parts of the carriages, you are getting 6 of these larger flat parts that have the hover mechanism on their side. 2 of these will be combined with the New Haven tops, and the remaining 4 flat parts will be combined to form the much larger Rockridge flatbeds. In order to connect them, you will be needing 2 of these center parts that make 2 of these giant flat parts into one massive carriage. Finally, on top of these connected parts, the top parts of the flatbeds are glued. These are resin, so they do have a tendency to warp a little, but that can easily be remedied by either heating up your part with a hairdryer or, for the bald gentlemen amongst us, a bowl of very hot water. To showcase just how long these new Rockridge flatbeds are, you can easily see this after the assembly. The Durango carrier itself is slightly shorter compared to the Lakota locomotive, but it looks quite a bit more sturdy. It's sort of clearly more geared towards transportation and less focused on the shooting part of it. As a final note, I do have to tip my hats off to the designers of this Union range. It all comes together lovely. The arches in the back of the artillery make a lot more sense now, and so does the slight curve in the back arc of the Rolling Thunder main battle tanks. The Rockridges have 2 round swiveling platforms sculpted on them, and 2 fold-out ramps, so you can easily imagine how these tanks get deployed to them, and it all just fits together design-wise perfectly. But before we get into the rules review, just a little preview for some of my viewers. I'm making a massive piece of terrain for the sort of Lord of the Manor scenario, where I'll be making an enormous RJ-1027 refinery to be captured in this mission. So if you want to see how this one comes along, definitely subscribe for that video. In terms of the rules for this new addition to the Union roster, we can immediately see that it is not one of the command units. That was the role for the Lakota. It is, however, one of the Carriages. The Rockridge flatbed can be attached to a Lakota, should you so desire, but you can also have it attached to the actual Durango heavy shunter, which comes as an armor entry in the Union. It comes in at 160 points, which is a so-called full-sized unit in one go. Now, the Durango itself comes with the same asterisk as the Lakota, meaning that it doesn't matter that it is considered full size in this little sort of overview. It depends on how big you can make it, depending on the unit size you're playing at. Which means if you're playing a skirmish, you can only add one carriage, so one flatbed. If you're doing a battle, you can add 2, and you can have up to 4 attached to the Durango if you're playing a full-size battle. This is of course without bolstering. You can always add some more. So for instance, if you're doing a skirmish and you want to bolster your armor, you could using a Durango heavy shunter. This is definitely an option which can be done in the Union faction battle group, because you do get one bolstered unit for your armor, which is where that Durango slots in. However, this is not the most interesting way to incorporate the Durango into your main force. The far more interesting way to do this is through the Heavy Rail Auxiliary Battle Group. Now, as a reminder, you can have one auxiliary battle group for every faction battle group, your main battle group that you have. Now, if you do this, this battle group only has one unit, which is an armor unit, which would of course be your Durango, of course, because it actually says that. It needs an engine for it. And then the battle group bonus is very interesting. It's facts on the ground. All the units in this force with the Carriage trait, so not the Durango itself, the Carriages, gain the forward special rule. And there's a small caveat in the designer notes that this works exactly like a commander bonus, but you do not need a commander to use it. It's just your Durango will have this. Now, this forward rule is a new addition to the glossary, and it means that after both generals have claimed their deployment zones, but before they actually start deploying their units, you can choose any number of units in their force with the forward special rules, which will be your carriers in this case, your carriages, sorry. One of these units, once these units are selected, you must roll a number of attack dice equal to the number of these forward units. So you throw 1 dice for every carriage, in other words. These dice can then be allocated to each carriage, and what they can do in terms of deployment depends on the result you've rolled. What you definitely do not want to roll is this blank one, because then you're just stuck in your own deployment zone, meaning that the Durango has not been able to get this unit further up the board than it would have. If you roll a cross, it's actually anywhere on the battlefield, but you have taken some incoming firepower from your opponent, so you do suffer 1 point of damage. There is a caveat: you cannot deploy in the opposing general's deployment zone. If you roll a glancing hit, it can be anywhere up to 5 inches outside of your own deployment zone, so you haven't really gotten that far. However, it cannot be deployed within the opposing general's deployment zone. That's a bit of a weird caveat, but it is there because, well, you're definitely further than 5 inches away from the enemy. But more importantly, not within 3 inches of a strategic objective marker or a defensible building. The normal hit is very similar, but it is up to 10 inches outside of this general's deployment. So with these 2 results, you cannot start claiming objectives straight away. But if you're able to get that heroic strike, it can just be anywhere on the battlefield without any restrictions, without taking any damage, and you can just plonk it straight onto objectives, which is quite strong because, well, some of these forward garrisons can just immediately claim it from the start of the game, and your infantry will be well covered. Now that means that one of the prime candidates, of course, to attach to your Durango is the New Haven forward garrison, because that one comes with that strong point rule, meaning that this unit can claim objectives as long as there is an infantry unit on the inside. And it's not hard to fit infantry in there, because it has both the spacious keyword and a very generous capacity of 8. So whilst risky and by no means a surefire way to immediately start claiming objectives, it is a new tool in that Union tool belt, which is very, very welcome. Now, of course, not all of your results are going to be either the misses or the exploding results, so you're going to use your Rock Ridge flatbeds to go push up that board as well, but they don't necessarily need to end up on objectives because, well, they do not have that strong point rule. What they do have, though, is a very interesting combination of ammo supply for Union forces and the assault ramp rule. The assault ramp allows the activation of the Rock Ridge flatbed to dump their tanks, or their armors that are on the inside, and the ammo supply gives units within 3 inches of the flatbed an extra combat rating. Now you have to remember, if you get out of a transport, you suffer a combat rating in your first round that is nullified thanks to the ammo supply rule, and in any subsequent rounds you're actually getting a positive combat modifier just for being near one of these flatbeds. The carrier rule is what allows them to carry basic units of armor or artillery, but those units themselves cannot have the transport rule, so you cannot make this sort of turducken with your iron hides to sort of have infantry within these things as well. That's not an option. And a cool little thing, thanks to the open top rule, if this unit is either occupied or loaded, it can make an additional ranged attack at the end of its attack step, but this is always a weakened attack made using a row of the embarked unit's armament grip. So even if you're not deploying them straight away, they can still make a weakened shot from the actual flatbed itself, which is really cool, so you don't necessarily have to dump them out if you're using it as a traditional carriage and you're not making use of the forward rule. You do have to be careful though, because, well, this unit doesn't have bailout. It has defense 3 and a damage limit of 6, which means that your opponent can try to shoot out the flatbed and destroy whatever is inside of it that way. It is slightly more difficult thanks to the resilient flanks, meaning you're going to have to take 24 hits, which is no small feat for your opponent, but yeah, you do not want to have your expensive armor units in there like a death trap. Now, as I alluded to in the beginning of the video, the unit I would pick to put in there is either these, the UR45 heavy mechs, or their Tesla equivalents, which we'll take a look at in a second. Now, the reason why is because these units are actually quite durable. At 6 hits before you can destroy one, these are 24 hits to take out a unit. They are completely unfazed by losing any of their number because they are automata. Of course, you cannot use them to capture objectives, but they are an absolute pain in the bum to take out by your opponent, so just dumping 4 of them into their lap and just going, here it is, now it's your problem, is quite valuable. In addition, most forces tend to have their tanks in the front, and with 8 dice in close combat, thanks to the Wreckers keyword, these guys are actually quite strong against enemy tanks as well. It's not uncommon for them to barge in. Most tanks only have impact attacks, destroy a single tank if they're lucky, and push back that sort of screen from your opponent. So it's a very valuable unit to push up the board quite faster, because they are limited a bit by their speed of only 5 inches. And thanks to their rules of bulwark and lockstep, they're actually one of the best screens to just put out there. They're not just a threat for enemy tanks, they're a little mobile size 2 wall, which is really great. If, however, you want a slightly more flexible unit entry that doesn't necessarily have to get into close combat, you can always go for the UR45E Arc Mix. They have a good range profile against both lights and attacks. Light and heavy, I should say, and they both have arc, so you can do tremendous amounts of damage if the dice go your way. And it's not like they're absolutely horrible in melee, they're just not quite as good as the other ones. And let's round things off by taking a look at the Durango Heavy Shunter itself. At speed 8, it definitely is a faster unit. If it works, or if it goes double speed, that's 16 inch of the board. Remember, your flatbeds can still shoot to the left and to the right, should they so desire, so it's not like you're losing a lot of firepower. With defense 4 and damage limit 6, it can take a decent amount of firepower as well, especially thanks to the durable keyword. And in terms of firepower itself, it's not massively impressive. It can't hurt heavy targets rather at range at all, but it can shoot a bit at infantry units. If it's at full health with 7 dice, it's definitely going to start chipping away at them, and it can for sure put up some firepower against aerial targets thanks to its devastating turret, which shoots 9 dice when the Durango is at full health. It's also quite good at ramming the opponent because its impact attack has the full steam ahead rule, which means that your ram is going to get 2 extra dice for every carriage it's still pulling. So a fun little addition could be a Durango with two flatbeds on there, which would give you a very decent ram of 12 dice at 16 inch in the opening turn, which isn't too bad. I suppose the only rule that I feel is a bit of a shame that it doesn't have is the Stalker rule, because then it could definitely use that aerial attack better, because, well, you're going to want to double time this one quite often, or make charges with it to get most speed out of it. Despite that little minor quibble though, this is an amazing new entry for the Union, and yeah, especially with the ability to drop new havens up the board and deploy tanks and mecha if you want to. It really is a fun little additional element, and it sort of reinforces that thought of the Union being an expansionist force that just rolls in with a bunch of trains and starts causing trouble. That is it for the review though. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember, give it a thumbs up, and that always helps with the YouTube algorithm, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye.